So let's move on to the first floor. We have Dr. Emily Plowman, who is the co-chair of the DRS Conference Committee and president-elect of the DRS. Dr. Plowman will talk to us about the abstract submission and review process, which I'm sure will be helpful for us to prepare for successful abstract submissions. And over to you, Dr. Plowman.
Great, thank you very much. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So thank you for that lovely introduction, and thank you for the DRS members for attending today. So this will just be a quick overview for those maybe that are less familiar with the DRS abstract sort of review process, to be transparent about how these abstracts are reviewed and some key submission deadlines. So this is just a screenshot from the abstract submission website that you can see here. So as you know, recently the abstracts became available for submission. And so just the key deadlines would be to make sure you get your abstracts in by September 30th, 2024. We're definitely an organization that prefers 100% not to be pushing back deadlines. So this we anticipate to be a strict deadline. So make sure you get those in on time. And then we expect to notify authors of the result, whether their abstract was accepted, and if so, in what form, pretty quickly by November the 15th. And then finally, as you've probably seen on the website, if your abstract is accepted, we expect that you'll be in attendance to present that, and that is definitely sort of one of the expectations. And here are the annual meeting dates and deadlines for early bird registration. So as you're probably familiar, there are two types of presentations, as with most regular conferences. And historically and typically for oral presentations, there are about 40 to 50 abstracts that will be accepted. And for poster presentations, typically this could be anywhere from 120 to 200 abstracts that will be accepted. And I'll go into a bit more detail of how these are specifically reviewed, scored, and given the designation of what type of presentation it will be in the ensuing slides. But just to note, if perhaps you'd prefer, you feel more comfortable presenting in a poster presentation format, you can, as you've probably seen on the website, specify that you would prefer that this only be considered for a poster presentation. One important thing to note, particularly if you're a pretty busy scholar, that the number of abstract submissions and acceptances, I should say, are that, as you can see here, 4 abstracts is a maximum for a first author to be accepted for presentation. And the reason that we do this is we would like to have diversity of individuals and labs that are represented and presenting at the DRS meeting. Of these, a maximum of 2 would be invited as an oral presentation, and a maximum of 2 would be invited as a poster presentation. And of note, co-authorship on other abstracts are not counted towards the presenting author. So this is for first author only. So how are abstracts selected? And just to let you know, there is a link that goes into greater detail if you would really like to sort of read all the specifics on this on the abstract submission site. But really important to note that this is a blinded review process, meaning that the individuals who are experts that have been assigned your abstract to review do not know who the submitting authors are. And we'll talk a bit more about this later today, but it is also really important, therefore, that you don't include identifying information to ensue that we have a blinded review. Abstracts will be sent to 2 independent reviewers to ensure that we have a fair and distributed review process. And reviewers do complete a conflict of interest disclosure form to make sure that they're not assigned an abstract, for example, with individuals that they may have a conflict of interest with. You can see here, this is a 10-point scoring system that we are using that ranges from 1, which would be the lowest score in the bottom 10%, all the way up to a score of 10. This is just a typical sort of template of the oral platform performance sort of range, historically, the poster range, and then the typical sort of rejection range here, just as a guide. Obviously, if we only have, for example, 40 or 50 platform presentation slots, they're going to go to those top ones, and you can kind of do the math. If we get 300 or 400 abstract submissions, which we would love if we got that, then it's going to go to the top scoring abstracts. So there's greater detail and information at the link on the Oxford submission site that one can go to. And on that site, the criteria that the independent judges or reviewers are given fall under the following categories. So the first thing that we look at is, what is the significance and innovation potentially of the work that is being submitted, its scientific merit, and its specific contribution to our field. The next relates specifically to the specific aims and the proposed hypotheses. The next area is sort of the rigor and the scientific methodology of the study. And then finally, the results and conclusions. And if you'd like to sort of drill down a little bit within each of these 4 categories, as I mentioned, there are specific bullet points under each of these 4 criteria that one can read on the website. What is new and exciting, I think, this year is the fact that for the first time since I can ever remember, at least, and I'm pretty old, is that a previous publication or presentation will be allowed this year, which is, I think, fantastic. And so specifically, if you have previously, with full disclosure, presented, for example, if you have an abstract you submitted for ASHA this year, the American Speech and Hearing Science Association, I should say, conference, then you are, but it has not yet been published in print or EPUB ahead of print. With the appropriate disclosures, the DRS this year is allowing previously submitted abstracts that may be presented or accepted for a conference within the last 12 months to also be submitted to DRS. So this could be an extension of this work, or it could even be the same content with the appropriate disclosures. And so this is a new aspect this year. So I took a screenshot on the abstract submission website that one can refer to for this, and we may have some questions come up about this at the end. As I'm sure you've seen on the website in the submission, it's a typical abstract format where there's a section for there's a title section, and then there's the purpose, the methods, the results, and the conclusions, with a tight word limit of a maximum of 2,400 characters, and this does include spaces, and it'll be kicked back if you're going over that. So just make sure you follow that. And then the required format also includes for you to include a learning objective at the end. And this is very common for those of you that have submitted to other conferences, but they can sometimes be a little tricky. So we do have a nice link there through ASHA for the correct formatting for this. And so typically we have an example here, after attending this presentation, learners will be able to, and it would be some sort of measurable verb as outlined in Bloom's taxonomy. And as I mentioned before, you can go to this website here that gives a really nice list and table of the types of verbs that one could use. So a lot of times it could be describe or recall, etc. Okay. So just to wrap this up before we get to the exciting stuff with all the awards, when you are rules to know when you are submitting your abstracts, the understanding is that you're affirming that all authors named in the abstract have agreed to its submission for presentation at our DRS 2025 meeting. And again, because it's really important for us that we have a blinded review process, that your abstract text does not identify the authors or the institution from which the work has originated. So when this gets sent out to the reviewers, there's a process that we undergo to assign these that sort of strips away, you're submitting personal information. So just make sure within the abstract text under the, aims and the purpose, the methods, et cetera, that there is not identifiable information there. That the submission of the abstract constitutes the author's commitment to attend the meeting and to present the abstract if it is accepted. And of course, expenses associated with preparation, submitting, and presenting would be the responsibility of the author or presenter. And then finally, as you might expect, abstracts will be written and presented if they're accepted in English. And they'll be published exactly as submitted. So for those of you that are not aware, the accepted abstracts do get published in the Dysphagia Journal, and that will be as they were submitted. And so it's the responsibility of the submitting author to ensure that it is written in the perfect order with no errors in spelling or grammar, and corrections and revisions or updates will not be accepted. I believe this is my last slide. Final rules, the work needs to be original work. And at the time of the submission, the content should not already be published, either in print or online. But as I did specify earlier, for the first time this year, we will allow previously presented or accepted material within the last year. And authors must confirm that the study described in the abstract was approved by the appropriate ethical committees, such as the IRB or the IACUC if you're doing basic science work. And that presenting authors must also include a disclosure slide or statement at the start of their presentation if it is accepted. And a template of that would be sent out to those who are lucky enough to be accepted. So that concludes my brief overview. And as I mentioned before, I would encourage you to look at this year we have included a lot of links with additional information for abstract submitters. So I will end it there and hand it back over to the team, and then there'll be a breakout session at the end for any questions and answers that you have. Thank you.